Hello, welcome to One of Two Submarine, the first global strategy game from publisher THQ Nordic. We play as one of up to 200 realms in medieval Europe, which we can pick from on a historical map of Europe, the Mediterranean, North Africa, and the Near East. The core features are the single-player maps, but there's also a multiplayer mode. You can compete against each other or play one of the single-player campaigns in co-op mode. That means your friend, girlfriend, or whoever takes control of one realm, you rule another separately, but you make your strategic plans and fight your battles together. The whole thing is a real-time experience, but you can pause it, you can speed up or slow down the game, and you can stop at any time if you want to calmly plan everything. Of course, that's not so easy in multiplayer mode, and there's another limitation in multiplayer mode as well. The battles you fight as a single player on the single player maps always give you the choice. Depending on the balance of power, you can let the computer calculate the outcome, or you can fight the battles manually. Then you can station each of your armies individually on a tactical battle map and have them face off against each other, flank the enemy. Anyway, it works a bit like in Total War, but in the competitive multiplayer mode, things are a bit different. There, these battles are always calculated solely based on the balance of power. Very important, the developers want to deliver an epic gaming experience, similar to the major grand strategy games from Paradox, for example, but compared to the big competitors, they want to make the games more accessible. That means you don't have to spend ages, days, or even weeks studying the rules before you can play somewhat successfully. You get into it quickly. Everything is explained much better too. There's a game lexicon, lots of tooltips, and if you want, you have this crash course with me. There's also a long Let's Play that I'm doing, which I record live on Twitch. In the playlist up in the corner for this game, you'll find all the videos about this title from me, and also this longer session that I'll be offering there as well. We start in a single-player campaign with 3 different starting years to choose from. Over here you can set it to either a large campaign under the standard victory conditions, or you can choose a specialized option, for example in the Goods War. If you click on something here, there are more options down below. For example, you can say that you have to possess over 20 different goods in your empire. The maps here have been designed by the developers so that no game is exactly the same as the previous one. That means, historically, everything looks roughly as it did in that time and era, but the strong characteristics of each province are different. There are preset settings from the developers, but beyond that, there are also certain probabilities. That means, for example, if you play as Castile, starting in the heart of Spain, then the probability that certain goods will start in certain provinces is relatively high, but the probability is never 100%. That means every game will always play out a little differently, because certain goods are always distributed a bit differently. Certain villages or coastal settlements are always distributed a bit differently. This gives it a very high replay value, and I have a wealth of customization options, not just in terms of difficulty. You can also choose whether you really want to start with a kingdom or just with a single small province. Then the map is a bit more detailed. You can also set whether you want to start historically with Grand Kiev or with Grand England. Or if you want to start with your favorite realm having only 2, 3 or 4 provinces. Or however many you want, there's just a lot to choose from. Let's take a look together now. Welcome to London, welcome to England. First tip at the beginning. First press the pause button. This will probably be the most important shortcut for you until the end of a game, whichever key you use. You can use the default key, or my tip, just change it and assign the pause function to the spacebar. In the options menu, for example, you can find options for interface and keyboards by pressing the escape key. There you can assign everything the way you want. With U for user interface, you can show and hide it, by default with the plus and minus keys on the keypad. With your keyboard, you can increase and decrease the game speed. If you press the asterisk symbol, the game speed will be at maximum. I'll move myself a little further up to the left. Yay, I'm still here. And let's take a quick look at the interface. What you see at the top in the middle is your ruler, and next to him are 8 slots. That's his round table, his circle of knights. The king himself is not immortal, nor is his wife. He will have children, or rather his wife will. Eventually there will be an heir, and so on. At the bottom left, you can see the royal families, the characteristics of the king and the queen. They are added together. Those are the little star symbols. There are 5 different categories: combat, economy, diplomacy, religion, and espionage. And together, they provide general bonuses that the royal family gives to the entire kingdom. Depending on which prince you have and which princess, sometimes you have some at the start, sometimes not. You can appoint an heir, a successor to the throne. And if that's someone with good traits that suit you well, you'll definitely be in a good position. The knights you see up there, on the other hand, you can recruit individually, and they really are available until the end of the game. For some magical reason, they're just immortal. You can recruit them in 5 different classes, but one step at a time. Let's start by looking at the map overall. It's divided into provinces, and each province has a city in the center and various terrain features. For example, here in this province it's London and the surrounding area, and here in Nottingham it's different ones. You can click on each one individually and take a look, but it's easier in the overview here in the center. There, they're also added up. Here you can see, for example, in Nottingham there is a castle, there are 2 grain farms, and there is a coastal settlement. Other categories could be monasteries, for example, and certain province-specific things, like limestone quarries, amber deposits, and other things. These are often items you can trade or negotiate for valuable deals later. One thing that hasn't been solved very well yet in the release bundle, meaning in the Zwei Savary, is the zoom. We can't zoom out any further than this. Here's a tip from me. Click into the minimap at the bottom right. You can also drag with the mouse, and you can zoom in and out on the minimap with the mouse to make it smaller or larger. And if you do that, you'll get a pretty good overview of who is where on the map. The most important resources at the start. At the top right, you see 6 resources. Money. You need money, just like in real life, for all sorts of things. At first there's a small surplus, but we can quickly increase that through trade. What I would do at the start is get myself a merchant first. In my opinion, the knights, which have 5 classes, are the most important. At the start of the game, the merchant is actually the most important. The second most important would be a marshal, unless the king is already won. Our king starts as a spy, and the kings also start in one of the 5 classes, either as a marshal or a merchant. At the beginning, you are actually well advised to have at least 1 merchant at the start. You buy one, the cost at the beginning is 200 gold. For each knight you buy 2 marshals. The second marshal is significantly more expensive, the third even more expensive, and so on. So think carefully about what you get. You can also dismiss people later, you can kick them, because the number of slots is limited, and then you can change things up later and recruit someone new again. But you might possibly lose books in the process. That's the resource we used above to improve people and their skills. If you let go of a highly skilled knight, then he's gone, and you'll have to start from scratch with the next knight in his class. Let's start here with a merchant and spend 2.5 gold for it. Yes, someone's already looking at how he can fill up our treasury, and each of these knights has typical actions that are linked to him and only to his class. Here, for example, you can trade. That means you look for a possible trading partner somewhere, then you send your merchant there, and he gives you money over time. How you find a trading partner? Either you already start with a trading partner when you go into this symbol here. Friends, threats, and wars. There you can see, for example, if there are factions with whom you have already made pacts. You can also switch over. One of our neighbors, for example, would be the French. You can click on any of their provinces and then click on the France symbol on their coat of arms. And then you can start an audience with the respective ruler and, for example, ask, what's the situation? Would you like to make a trade agreement with us, for example, since we're already well positioned in terms of trade and are a large, prosperous empire? If relations are good, it's more likely to work out. It worked immediately at that moment, but that doesn't mean we have a trade agreement yet. It just means we now have the opportunity to actually conduct trade. To conduct trade, you need 2 things. First, a merchant. We already have one, Baron Alfred, and we'll send him over to the other territory in a moment. And secondly, you need another resource in the game. You can see it in the top left corner. That's the trade capacity, or as it's called in the game, trade. Each trade agreement usually consumes 10 trade capacity. That means we can't trade with an unlimited number of empires, and later when you improve trade agreements so they generate more money. These are opportunities that pop up in the game, which you can accept for a while. You can say, I'll think about it for now. They then appear up here in this list. Below the knights, these trade offers will be listed. You can say, I'll think about it for now, but don't think about it for too long. At some point, these so-called opportunities will disappear again. Opportunities also appear with spies or with other possibilities. You might need gold or other resources to accept them, and if you don't have them, you can quickly try to get them, for example, the gold you need for it. But at some point, these opportunities will be gone. Trade with our Bronians. In addition to this action with the kingdom, 3 options are available. But we already had a trade agreement with the Germans and the Scots for the city. It costs a one-time sum of money. You can see here how much. It's the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance, 10 trade all the time. That's these trade things up here. That's the revenue it's currently generating. With the Scots, because they have a lot of valuable resources, especially at the start of the game, we earn a lot more gold, constantly 20 more. We confirm that.
I will travel everywhere to bring you wealth, my lord.
Now the colleague is still on his way. Once he arrives on site, the monthly gold income will increase here. That basically works the same way. With every character, you look at each one you recruit. You can recruit a marshal, who is especially good in combat. All your knights are also people who can send your troops across the map. You recruit troops in cities, so for example you can click on such a troop symbol here and then recruit 10 different types of units. The top 2 rows are always available to you everywhere. The top row. These are the basic units: light infantry, light spearmen, light cavalry, light archers. Later, at the beginning, only the peasants are always available to you so you can recruit more units. First, you need a barracks, which you build in a city like this. Go to the building slots. Attention! There are only 8 building slots available to you in each individual city. You can only use 4 at the beginning. To unlock more, you have to pay gold once, and you can't build more than 8 buildings in a city. So think, what do I want to do and where? A tip would be, in a city that, for example, has a lot of castles, it's better to build a barracks there, because the barracks give bonuses for the many castles you have in that location. There's a resource in the top right, take a look at it, it's called Royal Summons. That's the pool of manpower you have across the entire kingdom. In general, everything you produce in terms of resources, there are 6 resources including money, is important for many actions in the game as well as books. You need those to promote your characters, to make someone a knight and assign them better traits and talents, and then there's the religion resource. With that, you can also perform certain actions later in the game, especially with the knight you recruit as a cleric. That's trade, as I just explained. These are the food resources which you need to maintain your troops. So once you've recruited troops, they consume certain food items each round. And you have to make sure that you're always in the positive when it comes to food. You don't need to have huge food stocks. The main thing is that you're in the positive at all. And the other resource is manpower. Here, you can accumulate many of these resources in a global pool up to a limit. For example, a capacity of 1,000 here. The same goes for other resources. They often have a collection limit. For instance, you can gather up to 1,000 books. Later on, there are certain buildings you can construct in cities to increase your limit across the entire empire. However, at the beginning, I don't think that's necessary at all. Manpower is used when recruiting troops. That means, for example, if you want to recruit a militia here later on, a simple peasant unit, it will cost you 3 manpower. That's relatively little. But if you want to recruit light infantry later on, for example, that's already 175 conscription points, and that's comparatively a lot. And the really cool units like men-at-arms require even more. And on top of that, some food is also deducted each time, right from the pool. And you also have to think about where and when to recruit which troops, and for that you need those building slots. My tip would be, as I said, in a city with many castles, it's better to say, I'll put a barracks there, I'll build the barracks there. In a city with a lot of them. It's also helpful to do something like that in a city with many grain farms. In combination with castles, you can't go wrong with that. But do you have designated trade centers? These are centers where you have a lot of coastal settlements and many villages. They make it more likely for you to generate very high trade income. It's also helpful if you have certain special goods. In London there are salt deposits, marble deposits and limestone deposits. I clicked on the plus next to the buildings and then this overview is displayed for you. Basically there are 5 types of so-called districts in every city, a maximum of 5. In a city where you don't have any coasts because it's an inland city, you'll never have a coast, right? Yes, that's how it is. That's one such limitation, for example. You can only build the advanced buildings once you have something underneath them. So if you've built a barracks, then what you can build next will be highlighted in green: royal armories, manor houses, royal palace. Another example, if you've built a harbour, then the buildings that are unlocked by that will be highlighted in green. Conversely, if you want to build an admiralty, it will show you. That's the prerequisite for moving further up but further down. The harbour is outlined in purple, which means you need to build a harbour first. So if you say here on site, I'm building a barracks, it costs a one-time fee. Gold. 1,200 will be deducted from your stock and you'll see 1,000 hammers. That simply means the effort required until this building is completed here. At the start, you'll probably have 10 hammers in each city. That sounds incredibly little, but that's actually totally fine because the number of hammers doesn't speed things up. That doesn't determine whether you can build a building at all. It only affects how quickly the building is constructed over time. At the beginning, you actually have time. Whether there are many or few hammers isn't really that important. There is no calendar or date in this game. Years don't pass by here. The game just takes place in the Middle Ages. That's actually not so historically inaccurate, because people in the Middle Ages didn't really have a sense of progress. So it wasn't like it is today. Many technologies are emerging at a crazy pace. Time is rushing by, but the sense of time people had in the Middle Ages was different. We live in this time, and we feel like this time will last forever. And the life we have here, our everyday life, that's something too. The world will probably always be like this. People in the Middle Ages had that sense of time, so it's portrayed accurately. There's one thing. You can build 8 buildings per city here, but you can upgrade the buildings. The construction cost of a barracks is 1,200 gold. If you build another barracks in another city, it will be a bit more expensive, and the third barracks is even more expensive. You can build improvements, for example. If you construct a marketplace, you can later build an inn there. The improvement. Once an inn is built, it will then be available to all your cities with a marketplace. That means you unlock the improvement once and for all. The more marketplaces you have built, the more expensive it is to implement the improvement. The more improvements you have unlocked, the more expensive the next marketplace you want to build in one of your cities will be. There are a few things that are important when recruiting units. Most of these units not only consume conscription and food, they also use up a number of local citizens. That's the symbol here. Basically a little tip. If you right-click, you can calmly go into these other windows. You might also be able to call up other tooltips and maybe even click further from one window to the next. 3 citizens will be deducted from you. Those are just militias if you remove X or Z here again. This one, on the other hand, only costs 1 citizen point. That's the symbol down here. The citizens will regenerate over time. For example, in London, you start here with 10 citizens, for instance. When you recruit a unit, a citizen disappears. If you quickly raise an entire army in a city, there might not be any citizens left, and you'll have to wait until you can recruit new units again. The number of citizens also affects how much gold and how many economic yields a city generates. That's why it might be a good strategy to spread things out a bit, to have barracks in several cities, and to have unlocked upgrades somewhere centrally, so that you can maybe build spearmen, ranged units, and other units, but also recruit units in different cities, so that there's a small pool everywhere. On top of that, if your cities are attacked by neighbouring factions, for example in our case the Scots, who are to our north. And then there's always an automatic defense, which is shown to us at the bottom right here. These are the city defenders, the city defense showing how strong it is. You can also boost that through certain buildings so that more troops are available. Down here you can station troops in the city. You can also add a marshal or any other unit. This also works with the barons. The king can do that too. All knights and even the king can be controlled manually on the map and can act as army leaders. For example, you can give the king an order here.
Only a spy of the king can kill another one.
No, that's not possible with him right now. It doesn't work with him because he's not a marshal. You could tell him, please lead an army. That also applies to the marshals. They can then lead as an army across the map, and the marshals can take up to 8 troops with them, while the other leaders, the other knights, can take up to 5 in the city. Then you have the defenders down here, and if you place a guest army inside, a knight with his followers, you have 5 or 8 additional units that defend the map, that defend such a city. Good tactics at the beginning. First collect money, recruit another knight, a few merchants, do a bit of trading, make sure you have a marshal, you can make all the other units knights later. You can use clerics, you can recruit them to pacify provinces. For example, after conquering cities, you can send them somewhere locally to make sure the city adopts your culture more quickly, or that the province follows your religion. There you can perform actions that cost money and help increase loyalty in that area. You can perform actions with a diplomat, send him to another kingdom, and improve your relations. You can also try to forge a pact against a kingdom or form a defense pact and find followers. Those are the kinds of actions a diplomat can take. You send the spy out into foreign territory, into another state to scout it out, and that's risky. He can get caught. So it can happen that the kingdom becomes more negatively disposed toward you, but certain actions will then be offered to you on sight. These are all things you don't need at the start of the game. At the start, just go with merchant or marshal. You can't go wrong with that. Then one more thing up here. The stability in the kingdom, which is currently at +0. There are 5 different estates or population groups here. That's the nobility, that's the army, those are the merchants, that's the clergy, and those are the peasants. It's a bit rounded, either up or down. It's showing 0 here even though it would actually be -1. This is calculated in each individual city with the local satisfaction and with what is generated locally for satisfaction, for example through inns. They provide extra satisfaction, but there are also buildings that reduce satisfaction again. Tax collectors bring in more income, but also cause higher dissatisfaction. Down here, there is a satisfaction value, a stability value, which is the sum of the empire-wide stability and the stability here locally in the city itself. Very important at the start. Make sure that in each of your cities you always have a knight appointed as governor, as this provides positive effects in every city. Down here you see an empty field, no governor. You can either assign the king here or appoint one of your merchants. You can also appoint a merchant there even if he is currently performing an action or is traveling in another realm. That doesn't matter. Every single knight, whether it's a marshal, a spy, the king or anyone else, can always serve as a governor in one of your cities at the same time and can then provide certain bonuses.
I'll get all the gold for you.
It takes him a while to arrive on site, but once he's there, a merchant will yield higher profits, while a marshal will yield higher returns for conscriptions, depending on the situation. When considering this, which building you build where, feel free to check the tooltips for specific yields on certain buildings. And that also applies to the knights. Check out what effects they give there. The knights often give. Let me show you here. Here you can promote knights. You click on the plus, then certain promotions will be offered to you. For promotions, you spend these book points up here. You produce books in cities using specific buildings. And you usually spend 200 for a promotion. At the top, you always see 3 primary skills that you can fill and 2 secondary skills, and it's a bit random what you're offered there and how you can fill them. For example, you can spend 200 books there so that he becomes the governor in the city where he is. For each village that exists in a city, you get more gold. Character levels reach 3. He begins at Administration 1, which can increase to 3. And I'll right-click again to show you that. And depending on that, more gold will be given per village. The principle is always the same. You can think about which of these promotions fits best. Where should I use it? Pay attention. Some things are grayed out because there isn't a governor at the moment. If there is a governor, then it's no longer grayed out. Then it will be available for the local villages. And other things, on the other hand, are just general bonuses. Attention, here it says tradition, tradition. If you have leveled up one of your characters, either the king or the knight, to level 5 in one of their skills, then you have the option to select a tradition through Royal Family and Traditions up here on the top right. And you keep that until the end of the game, which means you need to level up someone to level 5. A tradition will be offered to you, which you can place in here, and then you'll have realm-wide advantages until the end of the game. It's similar here with promotions. This consideration works the same way. Which promotion is useful and good in all your cities? Take a look at what's being offered to you here. These things down here on the bottom left and this one on the bottom right, these are specific things that are possible in this province because of certain goods, under certain conditions. For example, saltpeter trade is possible here, and there are cattle, horses, and local wood processing. So these are things that are outside of these districts and the buildings on them. District is just another word for category. Please don't confuse it with the districts like in Jugendkind or Civilization. The ones on the left, you can upgrade them just like the buildings above, so you can promote them later, add dairies to the butcher and so on. Down here on the bottom right, the saltpeter trade, on the other hand, that can't be upgraded, it's just simple. I'll click on it once. These things here as well, these regional specialties use up slots down here in the 8 card. As a strategy, I would recommend at the start not to speculate too much on unlocking a lot of expensive upgrades because they cost a lot of money at first. Instead, try to fill these 4 slots as quickly as possible. The first levels cost relatively little and quickly give you good returns. It's not a problem to tear them down later. You get back some of the resources you spent, although not all of them, and later on you can always switch things around and build something else instead. It may seem wasteful at first, but on reflection, it's actually fine. You made great use of the building slots from the start, and will eventually use them for something else. Tearing something down isn't embarrassing. Then there are the battles in the game, and that's something really special. I switched sides for a moment, and this time we're playing as the Scots. An Irish king came over with his buddies, attacked us Highlanders and started trying to plunder us. If you're having trouble capturing a city, which you can also do beforehand, just walk around it, plunder all the little settlements, the villages, the grain farms and so on around it, then attack here, move in. Let's click on an example here. Then a plundering bar will go down, and if you haven't been disturbed during that, the enemy presence is almost at 0. Then in the end you'll be rewarded mainly with gold, or also with the opportunity to replenish your supplies. When we're abroad with our troops, we use up supplies. And we also have a morale bar for our people. She is one of our armies moving within our own country. At home, especially in one of our cities, no supplies are used. Morale is always perfect. If we move around within our homeland, it's a bit different. We do use up some supplies. If we are abroad, then supplies go down and morale goes down. And if we're talking about provinces with a lot of castles, then morale drops a bit faster. Foreign cities, to conquer them. Usually you lay siege to them first, and if you besiege them for a long time, and the enemy's supplies start to run out, then you can decide whether to storm them, or you can just wait. Let me show you another, a simpler case. Here the enemy has plundered us. We have the option to intervene manually here and say, I'll go ahead. We want to carry out this battle manually now, so you can see how it works. In Knights of Honor 2, Sovereign, it's a bit similar to Total War. Graphically, it's not quite as impressive. We can also control each of our squads manually here. And the goal here in such a battle is to...
Your Majesty, the enemy wants to burn down our houses.
Yes, we have to protect ourselves from that.
If we hold these conquest points, we will decide the battle.
Yes, that's what it looks like here.
Troops must stop the incendiary shooters.
Absolutely, I'm sure we're fighting on the only true, the good side, which is ours, what we have here. Several points on the map. One way to win a battle is to capture these points, which are marked with flags on the opposing side. That means we move one of our armies right next to it. We wait for a while. If there are no enemies around, then there's just a bar underneath that fills up, and then it moves. And at some point you've captured it, the flag is removed, and your own flag is raised. And then you've captured a point. If we've captured all the points, then the battle is over, we've won. Alternatively, we make sure the enemies flee, that their morale is at 0, then they run away. Then we've also won. Third option, we take everyone out, then we've also won. Fourth option, we kill the enemy general. That means there's always a leader, and that's probably the most likely way he'll win a battle. The leader starts here with a heavy elite cavalry, which also applies to our knight, who leads everything here. And if we make him run away or get killed, then we've also won. Then the battle is immediately over, and surviving troops don't disappear. They are back on the strategy map. They move on as marauding bandits. It could be that you have to fight them a second time. We can click on each of our units individually, we can place them somewhere else with the right mouse button, we can deploy them like this. You can, well, that's the enemy, sorry, up here in front. You can click on each one individually, and you can also pause here. You can move them with the right mouse button, and you can also use the right mouse button to deploy them in the formation you want. There are also different status options for all of them, which you can see on the left here and adjust as needed. Here on the left, for example, you can make sure that the distances are smaller or that they stand closer together. Everything has pros and cons, whether they are close or far apart. If they stand far apart, enemy fire can't kill us as quickly. On the other hand, if we stand very close together and enemy cavalry attacks us, we won't be trampled down as quickly. The ranged fighters, ready for battle, either fire at their own discretion at any enemy. However, we can also target a specific enemy. For example, we can tell them, all attack the enemy general, and we can also set them to fire at will. If we think it's necessary to save ammunition with ranged fighters, that's possible. If the ammunition eventually runs out, it can happen that the ranged fighters end up standing too close to the enemy. They'll keep firing but not as quickly and not as powerfully, so you have to pay attention to that. And all units have certain stats. They have, for one, health bars, and they have morale bars. The resistance each unit has is also different, and there are other abilities as well. They move at different speeds on the map, and there's a stamina bar. We use up stamina whenever we move our troops on the battlefield or when we fight. If we don't move the troops, they stay in place. Or if we only move slowly, the stamina bar gradually refills. If stamina drops to 0, our people will keep fighting, but they won't be as effective and they'll also move more slowly. I'll exit pause mode now and let our enemies come. Of course, we can also do it the usual way, move around everywhere in the usual way. Be careful. Forests, for example, make cavalry less effective.
From there, we can overlook the battle.
We'll let our enemy, our opponents, come here and place them up front. We have 3 light cavalry. We have archers back here. Be careful, there's friendly fire with both archers. So encountering the enemies is bad. If we hit our own people, that's bad. I'll quickly adjust the game speed. In this case, the enemy mainly has simple militia. It should actually work out pretty well. They're slowly advancing toward us. We can also have a few of them march in here already and try to break the morale of the enemy militia. Now the attack is coming. We draw a frame around all the archers and say, please attack, especially up front. The general, attention, we're marching forward. Right click. Can we make sure the archers do something?
Our blades are sharp. We're on our way.
Run, run, run.
Now they're coming back out from the back again. What about your own general? Shouldn't he try not to die?
Ah, the weaklings have fled.
We can't do it from there.
It looks like a mess, but when you play it yourself and when it's played tactically, it looks a bit different. If the enemy general is killed, then we've done it. If he runs away,
Follow the standard bearer.
that was easy. However, we also had a clear,
Conquest points. Those cowards fled out of fear.
we did it. Wonderful, yes, that's it for Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. As I said, I'll show you the playlist. There's also a long Let's Play. And I wish you, if you play yourself, lots of fun with Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign and much success. May you become rich, wealthy, powerful, and at the same time feel well entertained.